Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Tracy Cook, and I'm the online media manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled The Business Analyst Managing Up and Over. The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the question and answer session at the end. Please be sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the GoToWebinar software. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be posted at the ModernAnalyst.com website within a few business days. And now I'd like to introduce you to our featured speaker, Steve Blaise, PMI, PBA, author, consultant, teacher, and coach, who has nearly 50 years experience in information technologies. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, and welcome to everyone. We're going to be talking about bosses, basically, managers. And we're going to use the term boss because it's kind of more fun to talk about bosses than to talk about managers. Managers are just kind of a bit stuffy. So we're going to talk about bosses. And the question is, how do I deal with a bad boss? That movie was made a while ago, Bad Bosses, and we're not going to talk about the kind of extreme things they did. Very funny, but we're not going to be doing that. How do we gain influence over the boss? How do we present problems to the boss? And how do we get the boss to make decisions, assuming those would be issues? And ultimately, of course, how to get a good relationship with the boss. I mean, let's face it. If you didn't already know, the most significant factor impacting your job satisfaction is your boss. Now, the current Great Resignation, as they call it, people are leaving jobs in mass, and of course, the social scientists are out there studying it, and the HR people and the recruitment people, everyone's studying why are these people leaving. And a couple of things they found out is not unusual, not something that would be strange, something we've really known all along, and you and I have certainly known it, and that is that people aren't leaving to get newer, more money generally, and they're not looking to get better benefits, a pool table in the lunchroom, a swimming pool in the back or something. They're leaving because of their boss, their immediate supervisor, their manager. Significant percentage are just saying, okay, since everybody's leaving, I think I'll leave and find a better place to work. And what they're really saying is find a better boss. So this is a significant factor that affects your job satisfaction. And, well, let's face it, except for your significant other, you actually spend more time with your boss than with anybody else. And by that I mean more time with whoever your supervisor is. And unless you're the CEO of a company that does not have a board of directors, you will always have a supervisor. You will always have a boss. Well, okay, let's discuss the elephant in the room. When you're talking about bosses, you're going to have to talk about why you're leaving. What is it that's getting, you're not getting along with your boss? Why not? I mean, it's not me. I get along with everybody, right? It's the boss. I can't get along with the boss. Well, okay, so let's characterize. And here are some characterizations that I've heard and probably used over the past 55 to 62 years of, well, actually, it's probably even more than that, about close to 65, 68 years of working for bosses. Yeah, there are people who may or may not be bosses who actually possess these characterizations, such as the egotist. Only thinks of herself, never thinks of you, is always looking to get advantage and get ahead only for themselves. How about the pathological liar, who seems compelled to avoid stating reality, unable to be honest regardless of what's going on. Oh, I've heard bosses characterized as sadistic. Maybe you know some that you have said, this guy is just nothing but a sadist. He's a pathological liar, he's a masochist. the sadist who seems to enjoy inflicting psychological or social pain on you, or the masochist who purposely seeks out tasks and assignments that will end up in failure, not just for him, but for the entire team. Oh, they're all over the place here. The manager who's unapproachable because maybe they're insecure or they're misanthropic or social phobic or whatever. They lock themselves in their office and they don't communicate with you even when you initiate the communication. How about the manager who just, just have no idea what you're feeling, and they themselves are unfeeling? We see a lot of those in the movies and television, just a deadpan face. And no matter what you say, you cry and you throw yourself in the front of them and rend your shirt and pound on the floor, and they just stand there and stare. You tell them all the things that are going on that could possibly be affecting your life and why you can't hit that deadline because your mother's birthday is coming in, your aunt is dying, your wife is leaving you, your kids are drug addicts. I can't hit that deadline. Okay. Well, as soon as you're finished, get back to work and get the deadline. Well, let's take that a little higher. That sounds pretty bad to me. How about the sociopath? Has no feelings for anybody but themselves, if in fact they have feelings for themselves, or, oh my goodness, the psychopath. No feelings for anybody, but is seriously out to get us, seriously enjoys inflicting unrealistic deadlines. Now, actually, biologically speaking, a sociopath is someone who has a lack of mirror neurons. We all have mirror neurons. That's how we can tell how other people are feeling. That's why we cry when we see somebody crying in the movies, or we cry at weddings and because we're so happy, or we feel joy and start laughing when somebody else is laughing and we don't even know what the joke is. Those are the mirror neurons that are in all of us. People with an excessive amount of mirror neurons are empaths. There are people who can actually feel your physical pain. If they're close enough, they can feel it because they have an excess amount of mirror neurons. Well, a sociopath kind of doesn't have many, if any at all. They have no clue. Well, that's not a really good person to work for, somebody like that. But let's face it, there aren't really that many people who fall into these categories. All of these are kind of psychological things, right? There's only about 1% of the population that can be classified as true sociopaths, and even probably fewer that can be true psychopaths. And most of those sociopaths already have jobs as CEOs. So unless you're working directly for a CEO, it's pretty unlikely that you're actually working for a sociopath, much less a psychopath. So, if you actually find yourself in a situation where the boss is indeed a psychopath or sociopath, save yourself and move to another situation. For the rest of us, the 99% of bosses and managers out there, it's not a psychological stigma, no matter what we say, what we think. It's simply behavior we don't like. It's things like get rid of the bar there. The boss is ineffectual. We bring a problem to them and they don't do anything about it. They get flustered. They ask you what you want. They don't act the way we would want a boss to act, like a boss-like. They're untrustworthy. It's not like they stab you in the back or say things behind your back, which might be part of it, but they just you don't seem like you want to tell them things that are personal because they won't react right. You can't trust them to react correctly to you or to anybody for that matter. Now, you've got the micromanager. And so it's not a matter of the boss is a micromanager, it's the boss behaves in a micromanaging way. He behaves in a trustworthy way. She behaves ineffectually. We're talking about behavior, not the way they actually are. The boss behaves distantly. They don't communicate very well with us. They don't connect with us. The boss is indecisive. A very common complaint about bosses. They can't seem to make up their mind. And the more complicated and critical the decision is, the harder it is to get them to make up their minds. They're obtuse. I don't understand anything he just told me. He just told me all this stuff and gave me instructions on how to do this, but I still don't understand why or what we're doing, or he just does not communicate very well. And, well, let's face it, there are bosses that are just plain poor. Okay, well, let's ask the question then, if you were to be able to ideally pick the best boss, who is the best boss? Let's look at, make sure we get the other side too. Who is the worst boss? And the answer to being the best boss and the worst boss you will ever have is you. Well, obviously, you're going to be your best boss. You're the one who can communicate with you. You're always communicating, always talking to yourself. You have no problems communicating with yourself, but no problems understanding myself, right? I understand everything that I'm saying. That's only one way of interpreting it. Everything that you do is shared. There's no problem with whether it's going to be open and honest and transparent and all that. It is. You know, I can tell what I'm thinking. I know what, I don't have to guess what I'm thinking. And let's face it, as far as a boss is concerned, I'm just plain good when I am the boss of me. On the other hand, it's also the worst boss because we demand longer hours. Hey, we're the ones that the salary depends on, the pay coming in, so we don't work those extra hours. And having been in a situation where I've been on my own for the past 25 or so years, I probably work longer hours for myself than I ever worked for any boss. There's also the inability to say no. Now, of course, we have a hard time saying no to the boss anyway, but try to say no to yourself. All right, Steve, I'm not going to do this. Oh, yeah? I think you are. I don't want to hear no from you, Steve. Difficult to tell yourself no. And if you're working for yourself, you've got many bosses, all the clients, the contractors, the points of contact, and they all have different demands on you, and many times that's too many. They're conflicting with each other. And the shoe is always dropping. You know that other shoe, they say the other shoe just dropped? There are so many shoes, you can pick them all up for a shoe store. They're always dropping. And then, of course, talking to the boss is ineffectual. You know, if you've got a boss, even a bad boss, at least you can talk to them a little bit. If there's something going on in the corporation, you can talk to them. Maybe they have a conversation. You might have to walk off, but at least you can talk to them. Talking to you as the boss is a little bit difficult. Hey, listen, Steve, I don't know if I can get all this work done by the deadline. I got other things that's going on. Hey, don't give me that, Steve. You always got excuses. Just buckle down and get it done. So, Steve, I suppose you'll give me a hand in meeting the deadline? Listen, Steve, I'm the boss. You're the expert in these things. You just do it and let me know, and then I'll review it and tell you what's wrong with it. You know, it just doesn't work, that kind of discussion. You don't get a whole lot out of it. And then if you want to complain, you want to talk to somebody else, a coworker, about you want to complain about the boss, who are you going to complain to? Who are you going to talk to? All right, Steve, listen, I'm going to take this up with your boss. I'm sure we can come to an agreement on how your management technique, which is sorely lacking. Okay, Steve, let's do that now. Steve, here's my boss. Meet my boss. My boss, Steve, meet Steve. Okay, Steve, what do you want to talk about? Let's face it, kind of silly all around to think you can do that. So the best boss, the worst boss, maybe we ought to look at the boss we have and see what we can do. So actually, this is the first, not just the elephant in the room, but here's the statement. Have you ever asked of yourself about your manager? Have you thought about this. How do I want to be managed? What behavior do I expect of her? What behavior does she expect of me? Have you ever asked the manager what they expect of you, how they want the management relationship to be? When I presented this to a group at a big financial organization in the States, and there was a group of project managers, and we were instituting a new project management process, kind of based on the PMBOK. And so they were talking about different ways that the managers that they were dealing with just were not very good. And this manager is this way, and this manager is that way. And one person would say, you know, I can never get my manager to talk to me. It's always off doing something. It's like, you know, once a month is all I ever see him. And somebody else said, man, I got this micromanager always on my back, constantly checking up to see how I'm doing, constantly checking. I mean, I just want some time to be free. If they came once a month, I wouldn't mind it. You suddenly realize that, and I've been a manager, you know, of managers, a manager of people, a manager, supervisor, the whole thing in the 55 years I've been in the IT business, and the time before that where I worked in other jobs. And it's interesting to find out that different people want to be managed different ways. Do you want me as your manager to check in with you daily for progress? Do you want me to be a mentor? Do you want me to coach? Would you like me to show up only when you need support or a decision made? Do you want me to be distant and just knowing that I'm there? Would you like me just to leave you alone completely and let you do your job? Do you want someone to vent to or complain to or swap stories? Do you need a shoulder to cry on when you get the organizational blues? What kind of relationship do you want to have with the manager? Now, the reason why you would possibly ask, and when I suggested to the people in this financial organization that they might ask the manager, or what would you say, which I did ask a couple of people just to make the point, how do you want to be managed? The response is, I don't know. I mean, I'm working and I want to be managed, you know, as the worker. Yeah, but how do you want to be managed? This is the second most important relationship in your life. How do you want to manage that relationship? Now, in the past, when I was a manager later, many years later, I would ask this every once in a while. I remember it, sit down and talk, and I get that response, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me that, I never thought about it. And I don't let them off the hook, I ask. So if you were a manager, you might want to sit down with your people, every one of them, and just arrange to find out, how would you like to be managed? Because you're going to find out that each one might want to be managed differently. And don't assume, as the person who has a manager, that your manager knows how you want to be managed. They aren't mind readers. See, this is what it's all based on. We have a job description, and at the bottom of the job description, it says, and any other tasks that are appropriate and needed by the manager, or some words to that effect. In other words, they're just covering the fact that we didn't think of everything to put in the job description, and there might be some other tasks, and we don't want somebody coming back and having Steve come back and say, hey, that's not my job description, I ain't doing it. So we have this kind of catch-all that says, yeah, we got to do all these things and anything else that happens to come up. So from that point, you kind of think, well, the manager is the boss, they know best. I mean, you know, I got to do whatever they want. And that's the myth. The myth that the boss knows best. The myth that they will know what you're thinking. They will know what to do. They have the answers. Why? Because, hey, they've been around long, and after all, they got promoted to boss. Well, here's the truth behind the myth. They don't. My first job as a manager, Friday, I was the senior analyst, programmer analyst. I was basically the #1 programmer analyst. And they made me the manager. They said, starting Monday, you're the manager. Yeah, the manager, was resigning. We all knew he was leaving, and they figured they were going to get this other manager to come over from another project, and that fell through. Now they had the manager was leaving. It was Friday. He was leaving. This is the last day. We're going to have the party for him, and they needed somebody to come in on Monday. They pointed to me. What training did I get in being a manager? Nothing. The idea, as expressed in this book, First Break All the Rules, really very easy read book. It's very good. He says that the boss at management seems to think that if you take the best subject matter expert and turn them into a manager, somehow that expertise they have, the shortcuts that they do, the things that they learn will somehow get down to everybody else. And everybody else will have the same expertise as this one person. And if you look around, that's been happening for years. That's been the way of our management. And the answer is, it doesn't happen that way, as Buckingham and Kaufman proved by all the work they did in the research. It doesn't happen that way. Yeah. If I'm the boss and I don't hear anything to the contrary, I think everything's going well. Unless I see something different, I assume everything is going well. I don't have all the answers. That's why I have you. I have experts. We have Henry Ford or Alfred Sloan or somebody said that I don't know anything, but I surround myself with people that do know. That's why I'm the boss, because I have people around me who know the answers, and I'm not afraid to ask them for the answers. And you know something, the boss assumes you know it. If you assume he knows it, nobody knows it. The boss doesn't know best. The boss is just another person like you who probably had no idea what it meant to boss. He didn't go to boss school. He didn't say, okay, you're the boss. And over the weekend, suddenly I was blessed by somebody coming down and giving me a Vulcan mind meld and making me the boss. So Monday morning I could walk in and know everything a boss knows. It doesn't happen. We have to remember that it's just another person who has another level of authority. They're going to be able to do things we can't do. That doesn't mean they know anything more. So here's a couple of examples. I get a call, typically at night, from my boss, who's in Los Angeles, and I'm working in Reston, Virginia. My boss is a bit of at the time, he was a bit of a workaholic, so he'd go home at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and he'd call me. Got a brilliant idea. I want to check up on something. I want something from you. Can you get something done? Of course, it's midnight where I am in Reston, Virginia. So he's, hey, what I'd like to know is, can you give me all this information about this data for a cloud or whatever? It's always something interesting. He was an engineer. This was always coming up with some engineering stuff, and he wanted to bounce them off me. I was a manager of the Reston offices, which were the technical center. Okay, so he tells me he wants that. This is the first or second time he did it. That next morning, I've been up all night to get this thing done for him. I go down to my computer and I'm pounding out this stuff, and I get it, and then I show up in the office early morning, and I call him and let him know that it's there, and he says, "Cloud? What cloud? I'm not interested in cloud storage. What are you talking about? Why did you send me this?" He totally forgot. It wasn't that big a deal. It was just an idea he had. He assumed that I knew he was just talking hypothetically and theoretically. I heard the boss saying, "I want this." And so I jumped on it and got it done. That is real life. I wasn't too happy about it. But I learned, the lesson I learned, he asked for something at night particularly, or during the day, even if we would make very frequent visits over to the East Coast and set up his office in the conference room around the corner from me. And he would call me in and say, "Well, we're thinking about this and this and this and this." Okay, I would wait. I wouldn't do anything. Maybe make a few notes, be prepared, but I wouldn't do anything until he asked me a second time. If he asked me a second time, I'd then ask the question, you're serious about this? Do you really? So what do you want to do? And we would get into it. Very few times did he ask a second time. I saved a lot of time, but I understood now I'm managing my boss. Another example is when I was the boss. Kind of a similar thing, but note the difference. Here is me talking to, doesn't look anything like me, but hey, what the hell. So there I am talking to Jerry, right? So I said, hey, this is not a bad thing. It's a fairly easy thing to do. It shouldn't be too hard to do. I need this, this, and this. Can you get it to me by Thursday? Jerry says, of course, sure, no problem, because I'm the boss. I ask him to do something, he does it. This is what he's thinking. He wants this other thing he asked for me last week. He gave me that other project. That's also due on Thursday. Time goes by, 3 days of really long hours. I come in and I see Jerry completely wiped out. He's at his desk. He's barely staying awake. It's clear that he has put in some real long hours. He says, I got the reports for you. Both of them I got done. I say, what reports? You had 2 reports? Holy mackerel, I totally forgot about that other project. Why didn't you tell me? I assumed that if I asked you to do something and I'd already asked you to do something else, that you would say, Steve, listen, I've got 2 items here. You asked me to do A and you asked me to do B. Which one you would like me to do first? Or which one's most important? He didn't do that. But he did that afterwards because I said, okay, listen, from now on, if I ask you to do something and I've asked you to do something else and you have a conflict, tell me about it and ask me which one you want me to, which one has priority. Now you say, well, I don't know if I could do that to the boss. Consider this. What is the worst that could happen? He gave you a job on Thursday. He gave you another job on Monday. He wants them both by the end of the week. Both jobs are full-time jobs. What's the worst that could happen? You say, hey, I've got 2 jobs. Which one do you want done first? And he says, I don't, just do them both. I have to have them both by Friday. Well, you're no worse off than you were if you didn't say anything. Most likely, since most bosses are in fact rational and are in fact decent human beings, they'll say, okay, this is the one I want first, or no, I really want both of them by Friday, but let me have somebody else do this one. That's the most likely, but we don't think that. The boss asked it. He must know what he asked before. He clearly expects me to be able to do them both. And then the hero thing kicks in. I'll do it all and I'll be a hero. And then the boss says, okay, well, you did them both, then good for you. So managing up is the process of working with your boss to get the best results, to establish open lines of communication. Basically, your job is to make the boss's job easier, which of course makes your job easier. Well, in general, what you want to do is basically clear the air. So you can't say, okay, how do you want to manage me? How do you want me to respond to you? Can you listen to how I want to be managed? So instead, clear the air. Ask some questions. When he makes suggestions, offer alternatives. When she has problems, suggest, only suggest. Don't make it, this is the solution. You might do this and you might do that. And try to do it in plural. That is to say, come up with more than one solution. Recognize problems that exist and bring them up. Don't assume that if you bring up a problem, they'll think you're a troublemaker. Don't assume that they're going to be mad at you for bringing up problems. Bring them up. Most bosses are, they may be upset. And you want to recognize the fact that, you tell me a problem and say, oh, man, oh, I don't know if we can do that. And you think, oh, my God, he's mad at me. No, I'm not. I'm just mad in general. You just gave me a problem that now I have to solve it. I don't know how I'm going to solve it. And if you're concerned that I might be mad at you shooting the messenger, ask questions. I'm sorry, are you mad at me? Is there something you expect me to do? No, 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 it's all right. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The boss, that's the way the bosses will react. You want to identify the manager's expectations. You want her to voice those expectations. What do you want to get out of this? You want to control the dopamine flowing in her brain. Right? The dopamine doesn't come from doing something good, it's from the expectation of something good to happen. You want to take your time, not respond right away. Honor the pause. They ask you to do something, pause. Think about it. And ask more questions. The more questions you ask, the more the relationship will evolve, the better it will be. You don't know everything, they don't know everything, just keep asking questions. Now, let's talk about several items here. First, authority, because that's obviously what separates you from them. They have more authority. And the idea being that you have a problem, you have a decision to be made, then you're going to elevate it up to someone else. But here's the key there is to know the limits of your authority. And that goes two ways. You don't want to make decisions that are not yours to make. You don't want the boss to come in and say, you decided to do that, unless you have a good reason, like exigency. You weren't around, we had to move. I took a chance. I believe in Grace Hopper. I believe in her. She said, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So, I made the decision. But also, which may even be more important, make sure you make the decisions that are yours to make. I was working for the vice president, VPMIS is what they were called back then, and I was the next level. Changes, requests for changes and so forth would come to me. And I had people to provide information. They would give me the information, and I would decide whether we're going to make that change or not. This is an insurance company. All the changes that were made in the new software we were putting in came to me if it was software related. If it were hardware related or something else, priorities and so forth, changes, it went to the change control board. But everything else came to me first. I would only let decisions go through if I felt that they were decisions that I couldn't make, that I didn't have the authority to make. Well, I started out by passing pretty much, other than the easy ones, the obvious ones that I could do, anything that was at all risky, I passed upstairs. The vice president pulled me aside a couple of times. It took a few times for me to catch on, and said, okay, Steve, this is what I've decided, what we've decided to do. Just a question, you passed this up to us. What would you have decided? Oh, I would have done the same thing. No, I'm all for it. I would have done the same thing. You see, I thought he was looking for me to kind of verify or validate his decisions. No, he asked me again, well, what about this one? What would your decision be on this one? Well, I would have decided what you decided. Okay, Steve, then why did you give it to me to decide? Oh, I was sending too much up. I was not taking my own authority. If you don't take authority, you don't make those decisions. First of all, probably the worst thing to you is that it will impact your career. People will not believe that you can make decisions, therefore you shouldn't have the higher authority. But second of all, you're giving more work to your manager, which means they're not going to be too happy with you, which is what I was doing unintentionally. So make sure that not only do you make sure the boss makes the decisions they're supposed to make, elevate it to the right level, but you make the decisions that you have the authority to make. Don't say, I'm afraid to make this decision, I'm going to let somebody else take the responsibility. And if there's any question at all, sit down with the boss and draw a line. I'll make these decisions, you make those decisions. Well, okay, you want the boss to make a decision, you're going to bring it up to the boss. How do you do it? This is called the Star Trek method because the example is from Star Trek. What you're going to do is present the options, present the risks and the costs and benefits, if you will, of each option and a time frame by which they have to make a decision. Here comes Geordie the engineer to talk to Picard. That's Picard sitting there. Geordie says, "Sir, the Klingons are coming. They have the entire nation of Klingons, 40,000 ships. They're on their way. If they see us, they're going to blow us out of space and we'll all die. They'll be here within an hour. We don't have any way of defending against it." Okay, that's the problem. We could stay and fight, and we could take down a whole bunch of them, but likely sooner or later they will wipe out the whole ship. All right, that's one option. And we have an hour in which to make the decision of what we're going to do before it happens. Second option, we could split the Enterprise so that the bridge goes off and gets away, and the engines aren't working, we can't get to hyperdrive. But if we split the Enterprise up, a third of the Enterprise could get away because it would be light enough for the engines to get us into hyperdrive and get away. The rest of the people would be blown out of space. So we'd only lose 2/3 of the people, maybe a half if we can all squeeze into the bridge. But I have to know if we're going to do that within 15 minutes, because it will take a half an hour to do the separation. Option 2. Option 3. I think with a little bit of baling wire, chewing gum, and spit, I may be able to repair the hyperdrive engines enough to get us into a hyperdrive for just a few seconds to get away, and then we can limp into a base someplace and get it fixed. But I have to know within 5 minutes, because I need 50 minutes to get it done, and it's got to be done before the Klingons come. It might not work. Notice Picard hasn't said a thing. The engineer has talked about this is what will happen. This will, if we take this option, this is what will happen. This is the benefit of it. He might say at this point, "So tell me, engineer, what's the chances that you'll be able to fix the engine?" "I don't know, sir, but you know, we can work on it." Then Picard says, "Make it so." Basically, he just made the decision. He didn't do anything else. All of the options, the problems, the risks, and the time frame was set up for him. The engineer couldn't make that decision because he did not have the authority. When you are presenting something to management, let them know all of the options. You don't want to bring problems to management, says Peter Drucker. I remember being told that. Don't bring problems to management. But what Drucker actually said was, don't bring problems to management without solutions, plural. Here is the problem, sir. This is solution number 1, ma'am. This is solution number 2. Which one should we do? And make sure that when you do present the situation, I've watched this happen where somebody presented it, beautiful presentation, paused, awkward silence. I was sitting next to his manager. We had been having a conversation. Awkward silence. He looked at him and said, "Well, okay." And the kid walked out of the room. And my friend looked at me and said, "You know, you didn't ask me to make a decision, so I didn't." "Oh, you're going to negotiate with a boss on a continuous basis all the time. Everything. You negotiate taking an extra few minutes for lunch, and negotiate where you're going to go to lunch. So you want to follow this from Getting to Yes. Another very small book. I think it's only like 100 pages or so. Well written. You can polish it in a day. The original book was written in, I think, 1995. They updated it in 2011. I don't know if they've updated it since. But it's an excellent book to really give you a good feeling on how to negotiate. And what they talk about is what's called principled negotiation. These are the 4 points of principled negotiation. Let me walk you through how it works. I buy some rugs. The rug dealer, and I want to get a price on the rugs, and the rug dealer says $1,500. I say, cool, but I think I'm a good negotiator. I'm going to negotiate him down. It's after all, it's summertime here in Florida. Not very many people are asking for rugs. I may be able to get him down, get maybe 1,200. So I say, but don't you think that's a little high? The rug guy says, oh, you want to negotiate? Yeah, no, I took negotiating class. I read the book. I'm going to negotiate. So he says, all right, come into my office. Now, this is what I have to do. I have to take up the old rugs and scrape all the stuff off the floor and sand it all down. And then I've got to take the rugs and put them into the trash. And that costs $50 just to put them in the trash. And we're talking about 2 or 3 hours to take all the rugs out. Do you see any way that I can do that, or would you like me not to do it at all? Oh, no, no, you've got to do that. That's right. You have to pay $50 to take it to the trash. Nowadays, you can't dump things in the trash anymore. Do you know of a place where I can dump them free? No, I don't. I didn't realize that. Then we're going to put down the base that you placed it on. Now, this is what you asked for. Do you want to change it to a cheaper base? Say, no, no, that's what I want. Okay, well, here's the calculations. That's the square feet. That's the cost per square foot. That's what I measured. Do you want to measure it again? No, no, I know that's the measurements. And that's the total. You want to check my math? Okay, now here's the carpet. I can get a less pile for you and reduce costs there. We can change the material and get less cost there. I can not do the hallway and we can get less cost there. No, 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 I want all that. That's what we've agreed on. That's what we want. My wife would kill me if I didn't do that. Okay, well, there's the square yards. There's the price. Is the math right? Yeah, it is. And then we have to put the tacking in to keep all the edges down so people don't trip on them and so forth. And that'll be 2 hours and cost this much. Okay, all right, well, the total is $1,500. I thought you said you were going to negotiate. We just did. Remember that the results of analysis, and your estimate is the results of analysis, cannot be changed unless, assuming you did it correctly, cannot be changed unless you change the data that made up the analysis or you discovered that the calculations in the analysis were incorrect. He said, check my math, check my calculations, and do you have any new data? You want new carpet, different carpet? Do you want different things? Nothing changed, the estimate is the same. If you're going to negotiate with your boss for a deadline, sit down and figure out what you need to do to get to that deadline. Break it down. You say it's going to be 2 weeks. What are you going to do in those 2 weeks? Why is it going to take 2 weeks? You say it's going to take 2 months. Why is it going to take 2 months? Don't just pop the estimate off the top of your head and then negotiate from there. That's negotiating on position and not principle. Once you lay it down, I have had this happen. Can you imagine this? A vice president asked for a deadline, and I said it's going to take, let's say, 5 months. And he said, I need it in 3. And I said, it can't be done. Let me show you what we have to do. And I did this. He looked at it and said, I didn't realize all this went into developing software. Let me take it to my boss and see if we can get an extension, get you more time. In other words, had I not done that, he still would have thought it only take 3 months. He wouldn't have any idea what it takes to do software. All the negotiation aside, you're still at some time going to have to say no. And that's part of the overall relationship. The boss is going to say no to you. You're going to ask for an extra day off, and he's going to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you because of. So how do you go about saying no to the boss? Well, first of all, you start with these 6 words. Let me get back to you. Take a pause. Doesn't matter what the decision is. They say, where do you want to go for lunch, Mexican or Italian? Let me think about it. Okay, Italian. Even if you know what it is, stop for a minute. Give yourself time to evaluate your rationale for why you don't want to do it, why you have to say no. Determine the real impact of saying yes or no on yourself, on the boss, on the company, on the project. Consider alternatives, other ways of doing it than what the boss has asked that you have to say no to. Be with your response. You have the right to say no. Be assertive. I can't do that project for 3 days for you
Steve, this is
on
Tracy.
those
I'm just
dates,
going to
but
jump in.
I have these dates and I have these dates.
Hi, Steve.
Go
Sorry
ahead.
to jump in here. We're having a
Hello.
little bit of issues with your audio. Sorry.
Oh dear.
Normally, I would try and maybe get you to call
Can you
in
hear me
or
now?
just, well, we can hear you now. It's just cutting in and out a little bit at this point.
Okay.
Do you want to check
It
and just
might be the microphone here. Let me try this.
Okay.
There, how's that? Is that good?
Well, let's see. That is great. And you know what?
Okay.
Let's have you go
All
back to
right.
the last page. We really missed the alternatives, and this is just a great
Okay.
page here. So begin from
All
there.
right. So you want to be rational and assertive with the response. Remember that you have the right to say no. The boss also has the right to say no, not to no. You can't say that. You have the rights and you want to express your rights, but you don't want to just say no. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. You want to offer those alternatives. So, hey, I can't make it for that deal that you want for those 3 days on that date. But there are the week before I'm wide open and the week after I'm wide open. Or we could do this. Maybe I can, because of the conflicts I have, I might be able to arrange the conflicts so that I can give you the mornings and then I can give the afternoons to the others. Would any of those provide an alternative that would work? Now, the chances are none of them would work, but you didn't say no. You offered alternatives. Who said no? The boss. If you can arrange it in your conversation so that you are not saying no, but the boss is, yeah, you want to do that? Well, it's going to, oh yeah, well, we can do that. It's probably going to cost an extra $1.5 million and take 2 more years. But yeah, we can do that. Would you like us to go ahead and get started? No, I'm not paying that much money. Who said no? The boss said no. You want trust, of course. Believe in the mission, believe in the project. I'm of the mind that says, if I don't believe in the project and believe in what's going on, I shouldn't take it. I should find another job. And right now, that shouldn't be very hard to do. Make the boss successful. Know what the boss wants to get done. The boss wants to go up to the next position. Help him get there. Anticipate what she wants and ask. If you're not sure what she wants, ask her. What would you like here? What are your expectations? Keep everything on the table. In other words, no blindsiding. No come in and say, oh, incidentally, this is Friday. I'm taking next week off. I got an emergency. No, you'll be the week off. Tell them as soon as you find out. Get it on the table. Don't make them work for things. Be open. Be there. Honor the time for both of you. And always, always, always give them choices. And finally, I leave you with get out of jail free cards or words. This is the right answer. This is the best solution. This is the most efficient way of doing it. This decision is the best decision I can make. Based on the information that I or we have at this time. When you use that, and I found that I do this constantly, use that as a phrase, you're letting yourself off the hook. You can't be blamed for a decision. You can't have responsibility for it because you made the decision based on the information you have at that time. 10 minutes later, the information might change, and so might the decision. Working that way with your boss means that everything is on the table and the relationship becomes a lot smoother. So with that, I have just given you the absolute best advice on how to work with your boss based on the information that I have at this time. Bringing us to questions.
Thank you, Steve, for such a great presentation. We are going to begin to answer questions. I got to say, I love the no, no, no slide. I'm thinking about using that in many places. And a reminder for our attendees, please, if you have any questions, you can type them into the questions box right now. As well, for today's presentations, if you have any challenges or issues, with your boss that you'd like Steve to weigh on, just type them into the questions box and I'll ask Steve. Our first question, Steve, just my boss is kind of stubborn and he often asks my opinion, but then shows quick dislike for my answers. How can I get him to be more open to other people's ideas?
I can think of several things that could be done. One just from the previous slides. Um, Instead of giving an opinion, that would be your opinion. And people tend to give their opinions with adamancy. This is what I believe. I believe this is true. And the problem is that we hear somebody give the opinion and then we kind of feel like we're obligated. Somebody gives us advice and we're obligated to take that advice. And you probably had a situation where you say, I don't want to give that person any advice anyway, they never take my advice. Well, it's just advice, they don't have to. But suppose instead of giving an opinion, this is what I think, what you should do is this.
Steve, we've lost you again.
Done.
Sorry,
So
Steve,
you're presenting.
we lost you again there, Steve. If you think it's a headset, maybe just unplug it right now for the question period, and we'll just use your computer speakers. And our attendees, sorry, we do test that out, and sometimes technology happens.
There
Steve,
we
can you
go.
hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
we can now, thank you. So we
Yep.
just lost that last
Okay.
sentence you were saying.
Yeah, you want to offer not just an opinion, but suggestions. How about this? They ask for your opinion on what we should do. Well, we could do this, we could do that, we might do the other thing. If they ignore all of them, hey, they're just ignoring suggestions, and it comes across as suggestions. You're not personally involved with the suggestion. You don't have an emotional attachment to it. You're just making suggestions. Two things here. One is that you're bringing up ideas, and the boss would like that. He's hearing ideas. That's what he asked for. And you're able to divorce yourself from a specific opinion so you don't feel bad if they don't go with the opinion. So instead of saying, I don't think that's, what do you think? Do you think this is going to work? You say, well, it's the same thing as saying no. You say, no, I don't think it's going to work. Instead, you say, you could do this and that instead, and there's this other option over here. Or what is your opinion on this? And you say, I'll get back to you on that. Give me a few minutes to think about that. And that way it'll come out as more reasoned than just simply an opinion. And I don't know that it's all stubbornness. It could be just stubbornness, but most likely it's the fact that they're getting an opinion they don't like and don't know what to do about it.
Thanks, Steve. We have a couple more questions, and let's hope that your audio keeps working. How would you handle a situation when your former colleague is now your supervisor?
That example I gave you, where Friday I was the senior programmer analyst and Monday I was the project manager. One of the things they didn't tell me was that you're no longer on the team as a project manager. So I came in Monday morning. I mean, we had the party Friday night. I saw some of them on the weekend, briefly, but then for Monday morning I came in and it was different. I mean, it was so different I could feel it. I felt like I was in a different company, a different project. These people were not acting toward me and treating me the way they did Friday before I became the boss. Everywhere I walked, it was like I had this big bee on my chest. It was no longer me, the coworker, going out to bar afterwards and having a drink, and yeah, I wasn't even invited. I was no longer on the team. They did not look at me as a member of the team. They looked at me as the boss. This is natural. And if you look at the PMBOK, Prince 2, all of them, it will advice from expert project managers. They tell you that you have a team. The project manager is not on that team. The project manager manages the team. And they're telling you that because that will make your job as a project manager easier and better, but also because it's a fact of life. So you have a colleague that's now the manager. They're no longer your colleague. They're now the manager. How did you treat or act or react or have a relationship with your previous project manager? Now, if they're a manager of some other project, that's a different story. But if they're the manager of the project you're on, that's it, man. Be friends and everything outside, but at work, that relationship that you had is no longer there. And you just have to accept that as part of the way we do our hierarchical organizations.
Thank you, Steve. I think we have time for just one more question. And suggestions if I have a great relationship with my boss, but her boss, for example, the CIO, is the challenge.
You might have to write me an email on that because you didn't say what the challenge is. Why is the CIO challenge? Is the CIO micromanaging your boss? Is the CIO going around your boss to you? Those are two completely different problems. I've had both of those happen. And I've been the manager where I've had my manager or somebody upstairs go around. When you have somebody upstairs go around your boss, the very first thing you do is go to your boss and say why. Not accusation, not saying this person's stepping out of line, but go in and say, can you explain why Sally, the CIO, was talking to me about this? Did you know anything about it? Now you're putting it where it belongs. That relationship is between your boss and her boss. So your boss has got to iron out. Now maybe your boss says, "Oh no, she does that all the time. I have no problem with it." Okay, no problem. Problem solved. There is none. But we're not going to go in accusatory. We're not going to go in and say, "I've got a problem here." We're going to walk in and ask questions. Well, are you aware of this is going on? I feel a little uneasy. Should I feel uneasy? Is this a problem? And therefore, you're putting it where it belongs, which is on your boss. If there's some other challenge, drop me a line and ask. I'll be more than happy. I got nothing better to do down here in Florida. I'm in semi-retirement, so I got nothing better to do than answer emails. So by all means, if you need more explanation of the or it's a different challenge, drop me a line and I'll be more than happy. And same thing with everybody else.
Thank you, Steve. That was a great answer. We are out of time right now. So Steve, again, we'd like to thank you for such an informative and fun to listen to presentation. We'd also like to thank everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. And I'd like to remind you that today's webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at the ModernAnalyst.com website within a few days. This concludes today's event. Again, Steve, thank you for your great presentation, and we hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.